Okay, people. Yo, this is a real treat. I am joined today by Seth Savoy, writer, producer, cinematographer. Seth's done it all, man. Like, Seth, thank you so much for your time, man. Welcome to the pod.
For sure, man. Anytime, dude. Love your stuff.
Yo, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And people may recognize the name because Seth was producer on Ghost in the Void, right? Jason Miller's feature debut. So yeah, and when we spoke to Jason had nothing but glowing things to say about you, man.
That's nice of him. That's nice of him. Yeah, I really I think Jason's got a really unique voice, man. I think it's for a particular audience, but I think it's only a matter of time until he gets the next one and the next one and the next one.
Because yeah, Jason helped you. He was a writer, right, on Echo Boomer.
He was. We actually we wrote the script together, which, like looking back on it, like the reason I needed him is because I didn't know if I could do it on my own, right? And so like to have that person that that is there to do it with you and can like show you that you can do it is at the time I didn't realize how valuable that was. But without Jason, I don't think any of this journey would have happened. So I really owe him something.
Yo, I think that's so important, right? Because I think a lot of times people are happy to be like, yo, I did this on my own, right? I didn't
Sure.
need anyone to do this shit. But they probably did though,
For sure, man,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, there's
It
always
takes a village, man. It takes a
yeah,
village. It really does.
that's the thing. If it's just someone in your corner going, "Yo, don't give up, man. You got this. I read your last thing. I watched your last thing. I heard your
Sure.
last thing. It was great. You've got a voice. Go do your thing." If it's just someone doing that, that alone is huge.
Priceless. It's priceless, man. It's it
Mm,
it's like the thing, it's the backbone that could like keep a creative going, even if it's just like one or two people, man. It's like just having those people in your corner is absolutely incredible. And Jason was one of the first people that I met that was like there for me in that corner. So, I owe him a lot. But and that's honestly why I wanted to do Ghost, right? It's like I felt like not only did he have a really unique voice, but I felt like I owed him after all that support.
Well, yeah, it's funny because that's the thing. He said you were that person for him, right?
Yeah.
That gave him the confidence
Sure.
to go do ghosts.
Sure, sure, sure. So, isn't that funny how that works?
But I mean, I think it also shows, right, that do nice things and shit comes back to you. You know what I
Dude,
mean?
it
Like
and
when you're
and
just
that's
doing
kind
it
of
with
what
no
the
intention.
the whole producing stuff. It's like, I never really wanted to be a producer, right? But it's one of those things where it's like you see these people that you're really good friends with or that you love or buddies, and they're just like one piece away from getting their movie made, or they're missing posts, they're missing financing, they're missing crews, and if you can come in and help them, I mean, like, why not? I mean,
Mm,
I'd rather take care of, make sure that my people are being taken care of from a producing perspective, because I know how tough that can be. And if you don't have the right producers in your corner, it can really set you up for failure. So after Echo, I really felt like I had this opportunity to help a bunch of filmmakers that I really loved and make sure that they got everything that they ever wanted. And from a directing perspective, I was watching out for them at every turn. So, and the reason I did that is not only because I love them, but because I know that that good karma will come back around.
and it looks like you've got free producing gigs coming up.
Man, and those are just the ones that are posted. There are probably two. Well, there's two that I'm directing, which will be fun, and then like, yeah, maybe like four or five other producing projects. So
Ooh,
I know,
interesting.
man, a lot, a lot.
Man, how do you keep that focus, right? How do you keep track of all of these different projects and keep
Yeah,
that
man.
energy going?
Like that's one of the biggest things of like the misconception of the process of a project. It's one thing I learned after Echo Boomers is that is that you really need to have as many irons in the fire as possible, right? If it takes 5 years or 3 years to make a movie, then as many as you can have in the oven, the better. And
Mm,
so after Echo, I kind of realized that, and then I had to get over this hump of trying to find stories that I really really loved, and I found out pretty much the hard way that good directors don't give their good scripts up, right? and and so last over the past probably 2 years, I've probably went through like 500 scripts. I've got 3 people that read for me, and we probably found 2 that we liked.
right.
So it's really hard to find them, but what I've really been focusing on this past maybe 2 years is working with a bunch of different producers, right? Like finding a script that either I'm attached to direct and produce, and then find other producers that I really respect and love to kind of come on and do it. And I try not to repeat producers, but sometimes it just happens. But
Mm.
yeah, again, it's not just me, right? It's like getting other people to help and be that support system is the only way it stays in line. So.
Right, right. Now, what what's the things that you kind of look for in a compelling story?
Mm. Dude, those characters, like it's everything in the world. Like it's the number one thing that will make me put down a script and just say it's a pass is probably the cheesiness. Make sure it's not written well. Like I can tell within probably 2 pages if the screenwriter is if this is their first script or their 15th script. I can probably tell you pretty quickly. But it really just comes down to that personability of just like finding that script that truly shook you to your core, and you might not even know why, right? It might be hard to put words to, but you read it and it just like I read one of the scripts that we just optioned, one of the 2 that I liked. I found myself on a plane bawling my eyes out, right? And I knew at that moment that the script was phenomenal because I just couldn't control myself. So, that's probably the number one thing is how much emotionally can the script move me? Because if the script, I've said this a lot, and I really believe it that, a mentor of mine once said that the script is a boat, and if you push that boat to sea and it's not ready, it's gonna sink.
Yeah.
And when you go out to make a movie, that's all you have is the script. And if the script's not a 10, then no way is the movie going to be a 10.
Mm.
So that's what a lot of creatives don't like to. They like showing the end of the process and not the beginning. But the real meat of a project is rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and making that boat stronger.
That's real true. That's real. But the problem is, right? Because I think it's always when you're creating things, it's always hard to be like, yeah, that's good, that's perfect. Right? It's always,
Sure.
I could change that. I'm not happy with that bit. Let me
Sure.
change that. So when you're doing this, how do you know this is ready to go?
Yeah, I think that's a really tough question, and I think it's different with every project, but it's a gut thing, right? It's like as a creative, I think it's really simple. It's like, it's taken me a little bit to come to this conclusion, and it'll probably change in a year. But from a growing perspective, I used to really be torn on these scripts that were not incredible, but definitely by an experienced writer, right? Probably in this, there's probably a 2% that's great, and then there's a 10% that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I used to get really torn about that 10%, right? Of like, do we do it? Do we not do it? How do you? And then it kind of hit me one day of like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. And so when I read these scripts, if it's not, if you get to a point in the writing stage where you don't feel wildly enthusiastic about it, then it still needs work and it still needs time to grow. And so that's it's all gut, right? I just go by the
Mm.
gut.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It's funny because I've been talking to a friend who's a real great up and coming director, Daniel
Oh,
Glenn
cool.
Barber, right? He's first film was Yes Man. And it's out, people go check it, right? He's got some new projects, and he sent me through his like film deck, and I just looked at the ideas, and straight away it's just like, oh shit. Oh, you know what? That one, oh, you could do so many things. Like, that's a great story. Like,
Sure.
oh, and then there's the next one. It's like, fuck, that's a great story. And it's just like, I think when just the concept, right? Just the concept is in that enticing. I mean, that's
Sure.
always a good foundation to kind of go from.
For sure. And like you got to think like with any of these projects, even something like Jason's, which I feel like he got really lucky because I'd found some partners that would come in and finance it like pretty early into the process, which is normally the biggest hurdle to get over, right?
Mm,
And so because I'd found that, the process from script to being finished, it was probably like 2.5 years, and that's really quick. You know what I mean? So you really have to feel wildly passionate about these things because on the quick scale, it's going to take 2.5 years. So, and on the long scale, it took Damien Chazelle like 10 years to make La La Land.
mm.
So, you really got to love it.
Yeah, yeah. Which actually, that's a funny thing you bring up La La Land, because I think with that, it is so weird because I feel there's parallels with La La Land and Echo Boomers,
Oh, really?
right? Yes, because I remember when La La Land was just about to drop, and everyone was just like, yo, this new film, right? From this cat, Damien Chazelle, it's great. Oh my God. Everyone's talking about it, everyone's loving it. Boom. And it drops. And first of all, it's just like, yo. And then suddenly it just turns. And
Sure.
everyone's just like, fuck La La Land. What's
Yeah,
up
yeah.
with La La? All this fucking singing and dancing and La La Land. This is whack. And I was just like, yo, just last week you loved it, and now all of a sudden everyone's hating it. What the fuck is
Sure.
going on? Right?
Sure.
And
Sure. Yeah.
with Echo Boomers, right? You take it to Sundance in 2015.
Yeah.
You win awards for this script. People are loving the script. And then when the film comes out, people are saying, the story is predictable. Just all this
Sure.
hate coming, which is so bizarre. So bizarre. Right. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, I haven't really heard anything from Damien about how he handled that. But
Sure.
what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's an odd thing, frankly, but it's one of those things that I knew that when we were writing the story, which it's it's just like it's really distinct decisions that we made, right? It's like I'm a really really big believer in finding stories that there isn't necessarily a good guy and a bad guy,
Mm,
right? Like in real life everyone lives in the gray, and that's just how it goes. There aren't bad people, there aren't really good people. It's like we all make bad decisions and good decisions. Like that's just how it is. And I think that was a really distinct decision that we made with Lance, right? Like there isn't a lot of change. He
mm,
does make good decisions, he does make bad decisions. And I think it's hard for audiences to really get behind movies like that. But at the same time, there's shows like Succession, where Succession played in that exact same gray space that we did, right? Where
yep.
it's like these characters that and I realized the hate for Echo really came for the hate for these characters in terms of what they were doing, which
Mm,
actually was the whole point of the movie.
mm, yeah.
so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so weirdly enough, all the hate for the movie, it's like what's so funny about it is that was the whole point, right? It's like showing these characters that are ridiculous, that do believe in these things that are kind of off the walls, but that doesn't mean that people don't believe it, and that doesn't mean that they don't believe it. And so for the first act, I think uh I really tried to glorify what these guys were doing just to hook the audience
Mm.
realistically. And I think the ups and downs of people loving and hating the movie, I think it says a lot about, the generation that the movie's about. I think it's a lot about the mindset, about all of these different things. So, when I wasn't surprised that, like, a lot of people didn't get it. But I would rather make movies for the type of intelligence that I just like to be at on when I watch a movie, right? Like, I don't want to spoon feed to the audience what exactly this is or any of that. So, I kept it at a level that for sure some people missed, but I think that they got it eventually, which was the whole point. So,
Yeah, it's very odd, right? Because you have films like Scarface and The Godfather. Tony Montana is not likable, right?
right.
He is not but everyone, like you got little kids going, say hello to my little friend, and then be like, I'm
Yeah.
Tony, and they want to be Tony Montana, right? They want to be the Godfather. They want to be
Sure.
these
Sure.
characters, and it's so bizarre, right? It's so bizarre, but you don't get that. But he's not good. Like, oh, why should we be? Look how people gravitated to Breaking Bad. Walter White,
Sure.
not a good dude. He's not like you can understand what he did to a degree,
Sure.
but it's still like it's bullshit because right, you might be hard up in cash, but what you're doing is then fucking up millions of lives,
Sure.
right? But people dress up as Walter White. People love Breaking Bad, and you don't get that same hatred. But then there'll be something like Echo Boomers, and people don't seem to see that that parallel, that difference in
Sure.
it. And it's
Sure.
just like, fuck this. It shouldn't be here. Get it out my face, which is
Sure.
just insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I think a part of that attraction. I mean, like, look, I think, the thing that I'm proud about that movie the most is that I think anyone watches that movie and they don't think it's a first time director, right?
No.
And I think that was something that I was really happy with, and the reality of it is too. It's just like, uh, I was blessed just to have Michael Shannon and Leslie Ann Warren and those people in my corner supporting me, and so, even though this one wasn't just like a perfect home run, I think it shows that there's like real great storytelling in that movie, and I think some of the acting of a ton of the actors, but specifically, Michael Shannon, Gillis Geary, the guy who played Jack. I mean,
Mm.
there's performances in there that are just like wildly unbelievable. And for a first film, getting it distributed by Universal and Paramount and Saban and all this stuff, I think it's a really big merit, and it's obviously bought me a few more. So
Yeah, no, the performances were great. That was the thing about because it was funny, right? Because all right, people, the way we got talking was because of the conversation with Jason. And Seth just out of the blue hits me up and was just like, yo, great interview. Really liked it. Great review. And I'm just like, say what? Yo, this cat just watched this video like with no, you know what I mean? No, like, oh, now do this for me. And you were just like, yo, just hey, if you like, take a look at the film, but with no, oh, and we'll have a conversation and we'll do it. Like, it was just like, take a look at the film, but people didn't like it, just so you know. Right. And so it's
yeah,
just like, I wasn't quite sure how it would be. You know what I mean? But I'm just like, this Jason spoke so highly, and it was just a real nice message that you sent. I was like, of course, I'll take a look, right?
sure.
And but I was curious. I'm like, why did people not like it? What's gonna hit me about this film? Where I'm just like, yo, yeah, that was weird. But like I really like that opening shot where you
Sure.
just at the end of the corridor and we're moving forward and you kind of see like the skull mask, but it's not quite clear. And you're just like, yo, what's happening here? Like, what's going on? And then suddenly, like, it all kicks off and we just see these people just doing this shit. And you're like, whoa, okay. Okay, I'm down for this. Where's this going? But you've got like these great performances, yeah. And I just thought the realistic nature of what we're watching, right? There's a bit where that they're moaning at Mel, and he's just like, "Who the fuck do you think you are? Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
the fuck should I give you more money? What the fuck are you doing?" Right? Oh, because you write little messages that I should then give you. Why? And I'm just
Yeah.
because a lot of times in things like that, you get someone going, "Yeah, you're right. Oh, yeah, I should. Yeah, I'll do that." And you're just like, no one's doing that shit. So it was
Sure.
just the interactions felt real.
I
And then
appreciate that, man, but because it's one of those things where it's like, like I really took it. I could have made it more pop, like bubblegum poppy, more fun, more like maybe a little bit more like fun and entertaining, but that's not realistic.
no, no.
And I wanted to create something that really felt like it lived here with us, and this is how it would play out, and this is
Mm,
exactly what happens. And so, I think at some point, I think I created a little bit of a feel and a theme and a brand off of it not being bubblegum and it being what it is. And I think a lot of like the directors I love, like David Fincher and people like that, they wouldn't have made it bubblegum. They would have
yeah,
made it what it is, and that's exactly that. And I think that's just working in this industry, people watch Echo and they respect it on a pretty massive level just because of it executed a very distinct vision, which is so hard to do, and especially for a first one. So,
yeah. And the ending,
man,
yo.
did you see it coming?
Well, the thing with it, right? You're like, this can't be happy. This can't be a happy ending.
Can't end well. Yeah.
No, like there's no way this can end well. But how's it gonna end? It was like I remember there's a film Queen and Slim,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. I loved it.
oh my god. I love that film so much, but it's so fucking sad. But I love the fact it's so sad, right? I
Sure.
love the fact it ended the way it ended because it couldn't end on a and they live happily. It couldn't end like that. It can't, right? So when a film ends in that particular way, oh, it's so satisfying. And
Sure.
I just loved the question, like, would you do it again? And I was just like, don't say it. And he's just like, "Fuck yeah." And I was like, yes. Oh man, that was just so oh, it is
did
such
you
that
uh
feeling.
did you see the stuff with Jack coming? Like, did you know it was gonna happen before it happened?
I suspected it when only when they were in the room,
Mm.
right? It was like only when they had that conversation, and it was just like, and it will be all right. And I was just like, oh shit, it ain't
Oh,
gonna be all right. It ain't gonna be all right. But again, I respect it when you think about how the film starts, right? The fact
sure.
Jack brings him into it, but he brings him into some bullshit, right? So
Sure.
it's just like this motherfucker ain't really got your back.
And if you watch the movie from the beginning, this is something that me and the actor who just killed it as Jack um, talked about consistently is like the specific words that he's using throughout the movie,
Mm,
like that they're cousins, that they're always watching out for each other, that there's support systems, all these things. And he's using that from the moment we meet Jack. He's
yes.
using those words, which obviously later you figure out why, but it's such a beautiful full circle for that character, which is again extremely unlikable.
Mm.
right? Like as unlikable as it gets. But that twist is something that, and I got to tip my hat to Patrick too. Um, which there's this viral clip going around right now of an actor saying this, but it's something that we talked about on set. Is a lot of people, like when that scene happens to Patrick and he's outside of the motel and he tries not to cry. And we were talking about that from an acting perspective. It's like, no one tries to cry, right? It's
Yeah.
like you try not to cry. No one
Mm.
ever tries to cry. You always try not to. And Patrick took that note and it took him, probably 10 or 15 minutes to get into that headspace. But once he was there, it was heartbreaking, right? It was like visually you're seeing this man, this broken person, and you're seeing him be duped and all these, this great twist. And Patrick did a really great job of saying all of that with, just trying not to cry, which was awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. It just works so well. It just works so well. And so then what then happens after that point, it really felt, oh yeah, of course that fucker would do that shit.
Sure.
Right? Yeah, of course he's gonna take that route. Because it's just because the thing with that character, it's just like like if someone's trying to sell you on a job and it sounds too good to be true, but they're not giving you all the detail. Suspect,
Sure.
suspect. And then the minute you learn it's what it is, you walk away. So the
Sure.
fact that
Sure.
he doesn't walk away, and then the rhetoric that he's starting to use, like everyone else, like we're owed this, and you know what I mean? It's just, you're just like, yeah, he's this person, right? So just that journey makes so much sense. And I think that's the joy of the film, right? And that's why when you watch it, you are like, how many films has this motherfucker done? Right? How many
Sure.
films has
Sure.
Savoy done? Because this ain't the first, obviously. There's it just, it's kind of seamless, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of seamless in the fact that you're not seeing a lot of those first time flaws, where even a good film, you can be like, ah, right, but they didn't quite get that bit right, or that bit doesn't quite work, or the ending could have been, no,
Mm.
it works so well and it invokes all of those emotions. You don't get muddled with a love triangle. You know what I mean? You don't go down these roads which can really just hamper a film. So it's
Right.
just like,
Right.
yeah, it's such a fulfilling watch.
I appreciate that, man. And we came out November 2020,
Mm,
which was like middle of COVID. And so, I think a lot of filmmaking, as much as we like to think that we have control over it, like I think a lot of filmmaking is up to, a higher power, right? And like the timing of it, absolutely everything, the filmmaking gods, whatever you want to call them. But and yeah, I think that movie, particularly coming out while everyone's stuck in their homes, there was already so much built up anger over just where we were as a society, and then you throw this movie into the mix that's like really putting generations against each other. And I think some people completely got it and were like, holy fucking shit, this is awesome. And then other people looked at it as a spit in the face. And
mm.
I think from a marketing perspective, I think it helped. You know what I mean? Like critics arguing over it and stuff like that. I mean, it got people to see it. And really, that was the whole point in the first place. So,
Yeah, you know, another thing that I think probably went against it,
sure.
it was all the protests.
Oh, for
Right?
sure.
Because everyone is going, oh, this generation is, you know what I mean? They're really standing up for what's right. Look at them. Look at what they're prepared to do. You know what I mean? They're not taking bullshit. They're making stands. They're doing, and then something comes out where it's just like, you know what I mean? They have no thought on actually life or consequences, and it's just like
For
it's kind
sure.
of going against the narrative.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting too? It's like, and I have no problem admitting this because it is just very important and very something that just needs to be addressed. You know, like we were coming out in the middle of the Black Lives Matter riots, right? So like in reality, the problem and the just the confrontation about the film and all that stuff, there were bigger fights that needed to be fought, right?
Yeah.
And they were being fought, which is so beautiful that that was happening, and there was a real push for a lot of that stuff. But you know, at the time, it's just there were bigger issues. There
Mm,
were way bigger issues in terms of COVID, in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, really like kind of shaking things up, which was awesome. Um, you know, all of that I think was kind of working against it in a lot of ways. But you know, I think all of it, you know, I don't, I think is all exactly how it happened is how it's supposed to happen. And I think that you know, honestly, I learned so much making this first one on like so many really deep levels, and it kind of shot me into this realm of filmmaking of like people really respect the stuff that I choose and how I put movies together. So, you know, it's one of these things where it's like I'm not trying to don't get me wrong, I would have loved for it to be a home run. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna be doing this till the day I die. So it's only a matter of time. You know what I mean? It's like you knock long enough and loud enough, and you know eventually you'll wake someone up. So
mm. Yeah, I think that's the point. And I think you can look at a lot of films which didn't catch fire straight away, right? Donnie Darko. So many people hated Donnie Darko when that dropped.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah. I read
God.
about it. I heard that people just didn't mess with it at all.
Mm, yeah. And Event Horizon as well.
Mm,
No,
wow.
people didn't love that. And one thing I learned recently, um, oh my God. Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption.
Best
Another one
movie
that,
of all time.
yeah,
Yeah.
people supposedly didn't love it when it first came out. And I'm
Wow.
just like, wait, they didn't love Shawshank? How did you not love Shawshank? But it's baffling with any of those films. Because the first time I watched all of them, I loved those films, right? But
Yeah.
they didn't gravitate straight away. But then they become these cult classics.
And you know, I wonder how that, you know, is that due to the film just being in the universe and connecting with people, or is that due to, you know, the director continued to make things, thus kind of highlighting his other work in a lot of different ways. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's like
mm.
with Nolan and Memento. How many people actually saw Memento when it came
Oh,
out? You know what I mean?
exactly. Exact. And Memento, I think, has a similar thing to Echo Boomers because it's not a nice person,
Sure.
right? Not a nice person, but you're kind of you're intrigued, right? But you think, but you know, poor guy, he's lost his memory. And as the memory, you're just like, wait, hold on. Oh my God, he's a piece of shit. Like, what the fuck, man? But you're so entrenched that you want to see how this thing is unfolding. You know what I mean? It's such a great film. But I think what you said, it's both of those things, right? I think it's partly the film it just doesn't quite, it drops at the wrong time. And then as you know, more eyes get onto it, then people talk about it, and then it picks up steam. And then
Yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
you
Yeah,
see the director make all of these other things, and so people are waiting for that next film. So they're just like, it's 2 years away. Let me go back and see what some of this other stuff.
sure,
And
sure,
they
sure.
do it with authors all the time that they'll bring it'll be like, oh, thingy. His book is blowing up first time, and everyone's like, first time author, and then you'd be like, no, he's been doing this for 20 years. He's
Sure,
written
sure.
50
Yeah, yeah.
books.
And you know that was something that was another like really distinct decision. You know what I mean? It's like, after a movie like Echo, you start getting all these offers, right?
Mm,
And it goes back to the thing again of how good is the script. And like I know that, that's really all I care about. I don't like it could be, if it's a shitty script with great actors, it's still a shitty script.
yeah.
and so like I went through a ton of different offers that I didn't feel were right because I didn't feel the script was right. And I think the beauty of that is that when I do come out with something that I direct, people will know it's of a certain caliber that I hold, and I make sure that, I don't do movies under this caliber. I really got to love it, and I got to think that there's a twist that people will enjoy, and all those things. And I think people will love that when it comes to the next one and the next one and the next one. So
Oh
even
man.
if it did take an extra year or two, you know what I mean?
It's always that frustrating thing, right? Like whatever it is, whether it's literature, poetry, music, films, right? TV. When you found something like that you really enjoy, and you're like, oh, I love this writer, I love this director, right? You're just like, when they're gonna do the next one? I need something new from them. Their voice, man, it's so great. But then it's just like, wait, it says 5 years. The next one's gonna drop. Oh fuck that! Come on, man. I need it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
when that thing drops and it just hits all those points again, you're just like, okay, yeah, no,
It
that was
happened
worth the
again.
wait.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah, yeah.
worth the wait, man.
Totally.
Because I don't know if you've seen either film, right? But James Samuels, man, he did The Harder They Fall,
Oh
and
yeah, I thought that was incredible.
oh my god, I love because it opened the London Film Festival that year,
Oh,
and so for the first time they were screening films in the Royal Festival Hall, which is
oh wow,
a really great venue for music, right?
wow.
I've done music there, I've done poetry and other different things, but I'd never seen a film there. So they had the film there, and just the sound system, right?
Mm.
And the way he uses sound is incredible. So that it was just like, yo, this is awesome. Can't wait for his next film. But then it's just like, when's his next film? Like, what's happening with the next? And so then you hear, oh, it's this Book of Clarence. I'm like, what is this gonna be? And so when I got to see Book of Clarence at last year's London Film Festival, god damn, just blown away.
Dude,
Just
yeah, I haven't seen
blown
it yet,
away.
but it's on my list. It's on my list. I was gonna go check out that and Iron Claw this week.
Oh
But
man,
man, Book of
incredible.
Clarence, it's actually not playing in enough theaters. I'm sure the director will love to hear this. But like they need to put that thing in more theaters because it's just
Mm.
hard to get to. It's like they got one theater playing it in Chicago. It's like we need more than that. So
Oh man, I know because I thought it was meant to be out in the UK now, but I can't find it anywhere. So I don't
mm.
know if the release has been pushed back or what's happening. I can't find it, and I because man, I just I need to see it again. It
Dude,
was so
Lakeith
good.
Stanfield, man, he is truly a star.
Jeez. Yeah, because I remember seeing him again. It was at the London Film Festival because he did the last Black Man in San Francisco,
Oh, yeah,
which was great. And ever since then, god damn, he's killed like the Changeling on Apple.
sure.
Yo,
Incredible,
he's
man.
so
Incredible.
good. He's so like diverse in the
Yeah,
roles, which he just throws himself, and you buy him in that role, right? Because I think sometimes you watch people and you're just like, oh, it's just blah 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 being a cowboy. It's just
sure.
blah 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 as a banker, right? But when you watch Stanfield, you buy him as this thing,
Hmm.
right? You don't think, ugh, he's just pretending to be. No, no, no. You'll be like, oh fuck, it's a banker. Oh fuck, it's a lawyer. You
Sure.
know? And I think that's a real skill. That's a real frigging skill. But it's just
Yeah.
the whole cast kill it
Yeah. Yeah.
in
I'll check
character.
it out.
So
I'll check it
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to see that. But I think the funny thing is though, although both films are great, you still don't see the same love
Hmm.
for the work as you do with other things, which is really, I think it's really interesting what gets pushed and what doesn't get pushed, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's so out of our hands again. You know what I mean?
mm, like what did that feel like with Echo Boomers? Like, do you think it got the push it needed from the studios and those involved with the marketing?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's interesting because internationally it was with Universal, right?
mm,
And I didn't love the marketing that they did for it, but they at least got it out there, right?
yeah,
Um, and internationally, we went with Paramount and Saban, and the 3-year-old version of me, as a Power Rangers fan, would be proud of my 30-year self. You know what I mean? But but what they did was really interesting. We were number 2 movie um, that month in the US on iTunes. And what they did, which I don't remember who beat us out, but number 2 was awesome. And
mm,
the real thing of it was, before COVID happened, they had us coming out the same week as James Bond, The French Dispatch,
well,
and Dune. We're all set to release the same
oh my
weekend, right?
god,
Which would have been a death sentence, right?
yeah,
And sadly COVID hit, but what it did is it opened up an opportunity to the streamer or to Paramount and
mm,
Saban, because what they did is while these films were, do you remember in COVID where like there was this weird limbo where the
yeah,
studios didn't know what to do? They were like, do we wait it out? Do we release it? What do we do? And Saban and Paramount were smart, and they said, Seth, I know that we promised you a theatrical release. Sorry, not going to happen due to COVID. But what we're going to do is we're going to put that money in marketing and make you like, the top VOD sale while everyone's sitting at home doing nothing. And so they pivoted and started doing VOD, standard VOD and stuff like that, and it blew up, right? Like a ton of people saw it because of that, because
mm,
everyone was stuck in their homes. So I think they did the best that they could in that specific scenario. Um, and I'm glad that they didn't put me up against Dune, and their original plan seemed
yeah,
extremely flawed, right? And I'm glad that they pivoted. And so, that's the reason I think it even got to the people that it did get to. The one thing that really hurt the film more than anything, I think that even the critics' perspective of it would be different if we did the festival circuit, which due to COVID we couldn't. So
mm,
we originally would have loved to gone back to Sundance or gone to the directors competition at Cannes or any of those. I feel extremely confident we could have gotten into them and been a huge conversation piece. And I think a lot of people underestimate those initial reviews. It's like when you hear me or any director talk about their film, it's a lot easier to love it, right? And so when it comes to festivals, I think it was kind of a downside that we kind of got robbed of that due to COVID. But it's all lessons for the next one.
yeah. I think that's the big thing, right? Because after all that experience, what kind of things would you like to see with the next film? and the way the next film is promoted and pushed,
Yeah,
hypothetically
y-
speaking.
y- yeah, I think a lot of it. I think what this one did is this one kind of got me in the room, right? Like there was a glass ceiling, and all of a sudden there wasn't anymore.
Mm,
Um, and the beauty of that is now, I can have real conversations with studios personally, and I can have real conversations, with streamers and all these things, and there's a much more respect. And I actually get the meeting now, which before, that would never happen. And so, I'm not, from a producing perspective, it's great because I can really help the people that I love and I want to help. And then from a directing perspective, it's a little bit different because so much more goes into it. But, future stuff, it's really, I would really love to, which you never find one person that you stay with the whole time, but I love working with the streamers or with someone that has a direct output deal, because and then there's not like, you once you've built that rapport with them, it's just a little different. So like, working with Universal or Paramount again, that relationship has already been established. And now, I don't have to hustle and find all the money myself. It's like they can bring a little bit more to the table. So really, man, it's just finding the right partner that loves the story that we're creating, which is always a task, but when you start pushing that snowball down the hill and it gets bigger and bigger. So
mm, mm. And in the lead up to the film, like what kind of stuff would you like to be out in the world?
do you
Like
mean like
di-
interview wise or what?
like just those stories that help let people know this is a film to see, right? So
Yeah,
whether it's posters, whether it's interviews with the cast, it's clips of the film, it's like things that let you know a little bit about the character, right?
yeah,
So
like
little
that's
kind
the
of
biggest thing that I
insight.
don't think that we really got on the last one, right? For
Mm,
Echo, it's like none of that was done. It's like, yeah, we had like maybe a month of interviews, but it wasn't a ton of press. It was pretty small stuff, nothing like on kind of a national scale. It was all like local markets type stuff, and they did trailers. They pushed the trailer out a little bit, but a lot of Echo is, and getting that story made was a lot of just like me personally telling at the time why it was so relevant and why these kids in Chicago that were actually doing this, how that kind of inspired the whole story. And I take the pitching of these projects really seriously, and I think that's really what gets them made, right? And so it's like if you can share that experience or that pitch or whatever it may be with an audience who hasn't seen the movie yet, there's a 99% chance that I'll hook you. So
yes.
it's like it's again the festival thing, right? It's like if you can get in front of people and really get your message out there beforehand, I think it helps on a crazy scale, and we'll see for the next movie, right? Because Echo didn't have a lot of that, didn't have the film fest, didn't have a ton of the press. While for the next one, it's like that's what we're gonna push more than anything. So it'll
Mm,
be interesting to see the critics' reactions, the fans' reactions. One thing that I found so odd too about Echo is the critics' score compared to the audience's score. It's like they were almost polar opposites,
yeah.
which realistically it probably belongs in the middle somewhere. but but it was just kind of crazy to see. So I'm really curious for the next one on how that's gonna pan out with more press, more just kind of like prepping the push of it, and not being so rushed due to COVID. So
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things of what you just said that I want to kind of hit you on.
sure,
All right, okay, let's go with the critics score and all of that
sure,
first, right? Because so many times you'll see the critics go trash, and then the
sure.
audience like we love it, right? So it makes you ask the question, what does like a tomato score, a meteoric score, what does all of that actually mean? right?
Yeah.
Because it's so, sometimes, you get invited to a press screening, right? And it's just like, okay, so it's embargo to the morning of the release. And you're just like, oh, that's not good, right? Like, whenever it's embargo to the morning of, it's just like, oh dear. Oh, how's this gonna play? You know what I mean?
Sure,
And
sure.
or it's just like, you can only positive things can go out until this day, right?
Mm,
So it's orchestrated.
sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so when you see on Dark Horizon, they're like, oh, early reactions to this film is it's really good, and it's just like, obviously, because they're not
Yeah.
letting people say anything bad yet. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So I think, as a filmmaker, right, as a creative, what is, the thinking of all of that, of having those scores, those reactions, because you know how easy it is to game that system to
Dude,
some.
I would love to say that I would love if it was true, I would love it if I could say that I don't give a shit about that stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
the reality of it is like
yeah.
you do, it's
Mm,
like we're
mm.
human. Of course you're gonna care. And I think look, like of course I make movies for myself first, right? Like I make movies for what I think is really entertaining and what I think the good twists are and what I think the good character developments are. And I hope that other people enjoy that too, right? And so, with that perspective of like, I'm making this as an artist because it's a form of expression and it's a stamp on, what's really going on in the world right now. Like the moment that I started to accept that, I stopped really caring about the critic score, right? Because it's like that's way more important than the initial thought of even, you know, fans loving it and getting messages all the time. I still get messages to this day about it, which feels great. But it's like I realize that that piece is bigger than the impression that it made for its first time, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it. It's like you can't not look at, I read the reviews and like I think I after that I think I really started to, weirdly enough, respect critics a little bit more, right? Or not respect them all at the same time. But
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of this thing where like I realized that it is a game that does kind of need to be played, right? And but it doesn't keep me up at night. So
Right, right. Okay, that makes sense, man. And I appreciate that because, yeah, I think sometimes you're like, I don't give a fuck about that. But inside you'd be like, yeah, I do, I really do.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
But people
yeah,
people
totally.
lie about certain things like, oh, it doesn't touch me. I'm not affected. And be like, are you though? So,
Sure.
because we're
And
all
and
human.
and I think a lot of it's on the approach too. It's like, like you said, Rotten Tomatoes is very malleable, right? Like with
Mm,
Jason's movie, like we were really conscious of the critics that we sent it to, because if you're not into horror, you're not gonna like it, right? Like it's very black and white. And so, we sent his movie to specifically horror critics because we knew that it would get a little bit more respect just because they were in the space, right? And I'm
mm.
not quite sure that was done with Echo, right? I think they saw Michael Shannon, Patrick Schwarzenegger, Alex Pettyfer, and they pushed it to every single person out there, which is cool because it got eyes. So I'm not complaining, but I think there could be a lot more of a plan when it comes to pushing this stuff. And like with Ghost of the Void, because it was a movie that my production company did, I could have a little bit more control over,
Mm,
how it
mm.
needs to be presented, to whom, when. While when you make a movie like Echo, it's Universal and Paramount making the decision. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah,
out of your
yeah,
hands.
like the interesting thing about that though, because it makes sense, right? Because for the day job, I do comms, right? And so when you're sending out a press release,
Yeah,
you're sending it to journalists that handle that subject,
sure,
right?
sure,
If you're doing health stuff, you're not sending it to tech journalists, right? You're using
sure,
a
sure.
software, you're filtering it down, and you'd be like, okay, that journalist, the last 10 articles, they've talked about certain fit. Yeah, that's a good fit. I'm sending it to them, right? So that makes sense. But I don't know if I love horror, right? That's
Hmm.
the irony of it, right?
Wow. Wow.
Horror is this weird thing for me because I only watch it during the day. I cannot watch that shit at night. It is just
Sure.
like, yo. And there's certain things where I'm just like, it makes no sense to me.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like, why are they doing that thing? Because obviously now they're getting killed. Like the decisions and
Right.
and it just
It can be
frustrates
tough.
the shit out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why would you run into the woods when you know there's a guy with a chainsaw?
Yes.
Like, I totally. Yeah. Totally.
But first, I get sent a lot of horror, right? Which is just like,
Sure.
who hates me? But like, you watch a good horror, I'm all about it, right? I'm all about. Like, I watched a film the other day called Dagger, Dagr. It is like
Mm,
the Welsh spelling. Really good film, right? Really enjoyed it. There was a film called Chad Gets the Axe,
mm.
another really good film, right? And so these really good horror films where I'm just like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Oh, the characters are doing that. I'm all about. And so I think I with watching Ghosts, it's the way the characters are built up. They were three-dimensional. And in a
Sure.
lot of these
Sure.
films, it's all very one-dimensional. You know what I mean? And so I think when a horror is done like that, I can get behind. Like I watched that Talk to Me.
Oh man, I loved that movie. I
Jesus
loved it. I thought it was
Christ.
incredible.
It's really good. Like it
Yeah.
fucked me up. I'm just like, why are you playing with that shit? Who's doing Ouija? But like, don't do it. Don't
Sure.
do
Sure.
it.
Sure.
But I thought it was really good. But God, it gave me chills, man. But
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
when it's done well, man, I'm for it. So I think I'm an odd one at times with the way I will break things down. Because
Sure.
again, I'd say 90% of rom-coms I hate.
Sure.
I
Sure.
hate. But then there's stuff like Richard Linklater's Before trilogy that are some of my favorite films.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You know what I
Totally.
mean? Love those films. Love Jones. Love and Basketball. Really love Intergalactic. Love those things. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah.
think they're just when when you get stories and characters that are properly fleshed out, the conversations make sense, right? The interactions make sense. The camera angles, just all of these things just enrich the story.
Yeah. It flows. It gets into this like organic thing
Mm,
where it's just works. You know.
yeah, yeah. I'm then I'm all about it because I feel it's for me. It's more the story than the genre.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So it is like if people ask, they'll be like, "Oh, what's your favorite?" And be like, "Ah, I don't know if I love horror, but I can love a horror story." So
mm.
so it's always it's hard sometimes when I think about genres and things like that because it is more about the story than any because I do like a fantasy story, but I hate a load of fantasy books. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So
Sure.
it's just like, yeah, it's all about the story for me. So yeah, I just thought that is an interesting thing when you're breaking it down, trying to send it to people that obviously love something. Like, I don't know if I would have got it. You know
Sure. 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 Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Now, one thing when we were talking about like the promotion of Echo Boomers, right? Because I think that build up is so important, right? Because you want to let people know the tone of a something, right? What are you watching? What will this film do? How will it touch you? Because I just thought with things like John Carter, I really enjoyed the John Carter film. I thought the marketing for John Carter was all over the place.
Yeah.
And you had
Yeah.
you had no clue what the fuck this was, which I
Yeah.
just thought was such a shame. because it's such a good film. So I think about like that promotional angle a lot. And I think with Echo Boomers, like it's little vignettes that I would have, I think, oh man, I would have dropped something like when they're graffitiing the wall, right? So graffitiing the wall, a message on the wall, and then you just like the camera moves and it's one of the cat, and it'd be like, yeah, why should this person have more than me? Fuck them. And then swing a baseball bat and smash the glass, like so smash the camera and be like, Echo Boomers coming, boom, boom, boom. Right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
loads of different things that'd be like, yo, what the fuck is this? You know what I
Sure,
mean? To
sure.
build that
You
excitement.
know, I think it's one of those things too. Like that would have been awesome. I think the reality of it, sadly, is that like when it comes to indie movies like this, it's like a lot of these distributors, you know, that's just an extra shoot day, right? That's extra shoot day, extra money, all this stuff, and they really are really picky about the stuff that they choose to do more for. And so you're right. I think that would have been great. Just even small little clips like that for Instagram or whatever it may be,
Mm,
I think would have been incredible. Um, and you know we're learning too that you know how these different companies market your movie says a lot about the company. And so when it comes to these deals, you know that's something that we're talking about very early for these next movies because we know how important. Like that's a beautiful idea that I think could have been executed beautifully and added so much to the film. Um, so yeah, I mean for the next one for sure.
oh man, that's great because I think not everyone considers that stuff. So I think the fact that you've considered all of that and the fact that you're doing all of this producing work and you're helping other filmmakers bring their, you know, dreams to life and helping them with all of these things. I think that's so important, man. That's
Oh
so
man,
important.
I dude, I'm learning so much from it, right? Like I'm learning, you know, even if you're not directing, even if you're producing on the side, it's like as a director, you're still learning so much,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah. Like, how much did your early career like influence your style? And do you think you have a style yet?
Yeah,
Right?
for sure. For sure. I think, you know, even for the stuff that we're talking about for 2024, it's like the projects that we're picking, it's like there's a energeticness to it. There's a feel of pace that I think is is quickly becoming a style. Um, and you know, it's funny the things that you gravitate towards, right? And the things that you think are going to be the next big thing. And
Mm.
so, you know, like right now, we're working really, really hard on a project that we're so close to getting picked up, and it's a TV series about 1980s Chicago traders, commodities traders.
Okay.
And what a lot of people don't know is from 80 to 87 was uh, here in Chicago, the Mercantile Exchange was the only place in the world that you could trade for yourself and your firm at the same time. So a big trade comes in, a $10,000 trade comes in. They ask, who did you, in your heart of hearts, who do you say that was for? And so
Mm.
these guys would say it themselves every single time, right? And so they it became really well known that people could start doing that at the Merc. And so the Chicago outfits started sending mobsters to become traders, and they'd steal every single day. And then the FBI sent in fake traders into the pits to figure out who was stealing. So you see stuff like that, and it's very similar to Echo, right? There's a pace to it, there's a flashiness, there's these themes that are becoming, you know, a continual theme in
Mm.
kind of a
Mm.
lot of the stuff I do. But you know, even when you look at some of the greats, whether it's Damien Chazelle in music, right? Music is this huge thing for him, or you know, Scorsese and kind of the gangsterisms and things like that. It's like you see these themes of these directors that just kind of can't stay away from a topic,
Yes.
right? And that's you know what I'm starting to see in terms of things that I really like to direct and things that I want to put all my resources behind are these stories of, you know, kind of these thieveries and things like that that just for in this small moment in time became such a big thing. Um, so that's kind of, I think that's where the style is going. And it's something that, like, I really don't like comparing myself to other directors, because I think it's one of those things where I'm truly trying to find a unique own particular voice. And so even when it comes to lookbooks and things like that, it's like I'm always trying to create something that's completely original and one of a kind. So
I think the interesting thing about that Chicago idea is I don't believe I've seen that story,
totally. And a lot
right?
of people don't understand what a trading floor back in the day really felt like. I mean, we're talking about the biggest boys club that you've ever seen in your life. People shoving, yelling, punching each other. Like, Wolf of Wall Street made being a stock trader look fun. But
Yes.
being a commodities trader, I mean, these dudes were like punching each other in the gut every day, and, saying the worst things you could ever say to a person in the heat of the moment, and then they'd open the door for each other at the end of the day and just
Mm,
move on.
mm.
But it was a boys club that we've kind of never seen before. So, that's kind of the biggest thing that we've been working on with a ton of the same actors from Echo, which is kind of fun. So
Ooh, god
yeah,
damn. I really
yeah,
want
yeah.
to see that now. I
Yeah,
really
so
want to
that'll
see
be a
that
good one.
now, man.
Yes. So that's what we've been working on that one for quite a bit. And so we'll talk to the streamers pretty much Q1 of 2024. So that's kind of our biggest goal.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm intrigued by that, right? Because it's set in the 80s,
Right.
right? It's set in this world where, as you say, it's this boys' club. There's a type of behavior that happens, but in today's society, everyone would go, "That's so toxic. That's disgusting. Ugh, how can you glorify that?" And then you see these new constraints that are on films and TV and other projects where you know what I mean, there's these diversity quotas,
Sure.
which it's definitely a conflicting thing
It
because
is. Yeah.
I like, when I'm filling out a job application, there you always get the equal opportunity thing. So you have to make certain declarations, right? The fact that I can't lie about my sight, right? So I've got to write down, yeah, blind, right? I've got to, there's no way no one's going to look at me and be like, oh, you know what I mean? So it's just like you have to write, okay, Black African, you know what I mean? Like
Sure. Sure.
albinism, these things are just there. But there's these barriers, right? So if there weren't certain things in place, would I even get an interview in certain companies? Right. And it's frustrating because you just want it to be this level playing field. I don't
Oh
want
yeah.
a job I just want the opportunity to be able to get that job. And then it's
Sure.
just down to my ability. That's all I want it on ability. So when you see these things and it's just like, okay, you must have this number of people and this number of this and bum bum bum. I get it because you have these groups that have been held back for so long, but then it puts on these other constraints on indie filmmakers where you
Sure.
go, oh, that's going to be tough. Or because you see things like Bridgerton, right? And it's played and you see all this diversity and you're like, yo, it wasn't like that. Like,
Sure. Yeah. You're like, yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you might see those people, but they were servants. They were
You're right.
servants and
Sure.
slaves.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They weren't oi polloi, right?
Sure.
So it's this weird thing. It feels like it's this line that creatives have to walk, right? And so when you're making something that is set within a time period, right? And you can think of those commodity floors probably weren't diverse at all,
They weren't.
right?
Yeah. One of our stories is on one of the first black guys that really became a big trader, but he's the only one. Like,
Mm,
like he is the only black dude there.
yeah.
And that's just how it was. And one thing that this is something that obviously we'll have conversations with whoever the streamer is and things like that. But one thing that we're really thinking about, that again, it comes down to how real is what we're showing, right? In my eyes, there's not another way to show it outside of what it was really like, right? Like for me, and I think you lose the audience the moment that you start to do that, right? The
Yes.
moment you kind of start to bend the knee to these kind of like weird social needs that we have right now, I think you start to completely lose everyone. And so, even though it isn't PC, I want to show what it was really like on a trading floor, because if we ignore it, then we don't learn from it, right? And that's what it's about, right? It's like, yeah, these people weren't given these opportunities, and these, like black people or black guys that were traders had it way harder because everyone else had clicks and they didn't have a click, right? And that's just how it was. I mean, were there racial slurs and all that stuff? Of course there were. And that needs to be in there because
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
real struggle that
yes.
they went through.
Yes. It was because I remember watching Black Klansman, and there
Oh,
was,
loved it.
oh yeah, it was a great film, but only one policeman at the precinct was being a bit of an arsehole to him, and you're
Right.
just
It would
like,
have been every single one of them. Yeah.
yes, that
Yeah.
was one of the big things that kind of irked me, because I'm just like, no, everyone would have been like talking shit to him, like saying stuff to him, like taking his stuff, just doing foul shit, right? And I think if you don't show that, people just think, oh, it wasn't that tough. It wasn't. Oh, like, what's everyone talking about? It seemed fine back then, and you're just like, no, it was not, man. Like, it wasn't like that, So I
Sure.
think you have to, like, obviously, you can, what I mean. It doesn't have to be every sentence, right? It doesn't
Right.
have to
Right.
be every interaction, but I think you have to kind of show the reality of, because it just emphasizes the struggle and the triumph of that character.
And some of the movies that like we all think very highly of. I mean, you think of Django Unchained, right? Django Unchained, at least what I believe, is a really accurate representation of probably what it was like. Was
Mm,
it pretty? No, it wasn't. Was it disgusting? Yes, it was. That's just how it is. I
yeah.
mean, dumbing it down for an audience, that's not the type of audience that I'm going for. You know what I mean? Like, it's super simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds great, man. That sounds great. Yeah. Oh man. So interesting. Like, was it like was it just a script that came your way, or did you just stumble upon
Yeah,
that thing?
one of the investors that I had in Echo Boomers was actually a trader back then.
uh,
And so that kind of opened the door up to kind of having those conversations. And then I stumbled upon one of the biggest traders that ever lived down there, and he had a very interesting story of um, his dad was a part of the Chicago outfit, and he was a part of a particular part of it called the Wild Bunch, actually based off of the movie, but they were called the Wild Bunch because they were killers. They would kill people very kind of New York style, where they would just like pull up in ski masks and, shotgun someone that's at a sandwich shop. Like they don't care who sees it, just get it done.
mm,
And so I met this trader who his dad was one of those guys, and he was teaching his son all of these lessons on pretty much how to be a gangster, because he thought that one day he would be a gangster, right? On this trader's, like 5 days after his 18th birthday, they found his dad dead in the middle of a cornfield with 5 shots in his back. And he realized in that moment he didn't want to be a gangster because there was only
yeah.
one way out.
Yep.
And so when he started trading at the Merc, he realized that these lessons that his dad had taught him, that realistically his dad was hitting trucks, right? They were robbing trucks in the 60s. That robbing trucks in the 60s and commodities trading in the 80s is kind of the exact same game. And so he became one of the biggest traders that the Merc had ever seen. And, that's kind of where our story picks up. But
Ooh. Oh.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one, man. It's gonna be a good one. We're trying to make it this like beautiful, where again, like I'm not a big fan of the comparison game, but it's like Billions was great and Succession was great, and it was this money world that kind of introduced people to. It doesn't have to be this boring numbers crunching thing. It could be
Mm,
really entertaining, and when you add this consistent, element that audiences love, which is kind of this gangster mob thing, and you do it realistically. It's not some caricature of something, and you make it really real. I don't think anything's really been made that's on it. The only thing that's been on the Chicago outfit is one or two scenes in Casino. And that's it.
yeah.
That's it. And so, we're taking this extremely realistic approach to not only how they functioned, who they were talking to, who was a part of the story, everything we're taking from a historical perspective, which just makes it fun.
Oh man. Yeah, no, that sounds great. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Which this is the first podcast or anything I've given that little nugget on. So I mean, that's a good one. That'll be the next thing that people see.
man, like how, like you have to talk to the streamers, but and people on this, but yeah, how like ready are you to get going on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just comes down to the process that the streamers want, right? So like, we have episode one ready to go. A really, really big cast, kind of already attached, and they're kind of coming in to help us pitch it and all that stuff. But it really comes down to asking for a writer's room, which due to the writer's strike, it kind of the price of a writer's room just went up a little bit. But
Mm,
the reality of it is, we still need to write 9 episodes, but we already have a first one ready to go. So the beauty of it is getting a streamer to thumbs it up, and then we'll probably have 6 months of writing, and then we'll be off to the races. So we're really gunning for come 2025 that we'll be shooting. That will be all episodes will be written, and we'll have a schedule, and we'll be off to the races so that it can premiere pretty much in late 2025.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, man. It's like when you think about things like writers' rooms, are there kind of writers that you have in mind whose work that you enjoy, or do you kind of leave that up to other people?
Yeah, you kind of got to trust everyone around you. You know what I mean? Like I've got maybe two or three writers here in Chicago that I really like. I really like their style. I think they could be good fits for the rooms. All these things. Um, But, now for a dramatic series like this, the minimum amount of writers is like 8 or 9, right?
Oh, right.
So it just went up significantly. So now there's kind of a different level of, I'm working with an executive producer who's done a whole bunch of other shows. So, they would suggest writers that I would read. It's just, I really want to take writers that I really love their work. Like their writing makes me excited.
Yeah.
Um, and the reality of it is too, it's like, when someone like that starts writing for you, it can be tough because they're not writing for themselves anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
taking my voice and they're writing in my voice now with their flares and their talents and all these things attached. So it's always a weird balance, right? And you definitely need to make sure that they feel loved and appreciated because at the end of the day, they're the one that keeping this boat afloat in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's the big thing for 2024 is getting those riders in a room and making sure they feel loved and to finish out season one. So
Oh man. I have to say, someone who jumped to mind when you're talking about this was Ed Brubaker.
hmm.
Like he's a comic book writer, and he's recently, I say recently, in the last, I don't know, probably 10 years, started to be into TV and film. And I know I think he's got a deal with Amazon to
Oh, nice.
turn one of his series, is Criminal, into a series. But yeah, Ed Brubaker is such a great crime writer.
Oh,
Um,
nice. I'll check them out. I'll give them a look.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, that was just, yeah, thinking about it, it's just like that was a first name that kind of jumped, be like, oh, I wonder what he could do with that.
Sure, sure, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
And you know, there's so many great writers out there, so it's really just how much time do you have to read, right? It's
yeah.
like you're getting all these submissions. So that's what it'll really come down to, but
With all of these changes from the strike, how has that influenced the creative process?
oh man, I think it's huge. I think the strike was something that was so heavily needed, and you know, IATSE is up next, right? Like I don't think um you know, it took the studios too long to come to an agreement on the last one. So I
Mm,
doubt that they'll give IATSE something fair on the first pass. So, you know, I don't think it'll last very long. I think it'll last maybe a month or two, but I think you know, people aren't getting paid their fair share. And I was a big supporter of, you know, holding out until we got exactly what we wanted, which I think we got pretty close. So I think it was a much needed reset button, and I think IATSE is up next. So, you know, hopefully that works out for them too. But yeah, I think it's something that was vital to making this profession um, actually, you know, like it's like we were talking about before. It's like you got to give these writers what's due, and if you're paying them $15,000 a year, it's just not going to cut it. You know what I mean?
no, no. But it's just all of that stuff then cuts into those budgets, right?
They do, yeah, they
So
do.
it's just like now thinking about, okay, we want to make this. Like, does it kind of change the structure of a deal? Like,
It
are you
does.
kind of like,
It
I'll
does.
take more on the back end than I would normally, like where I take more on the front end? Is it things like this, the decisions now that you're making? Like,
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is those deals, you know, one thing that not a lot of people are talking about is that sure, the writers got a lot what they wanted, right? But due to that price increase, due to all those things, less projects will be greenlit, right?
yes.
Like that's just the reality of it. It's
Mm,
like that money isn't going to come from the CEOs. That's going to come from other projects not being greenlit, right? So, you know, it makes the bullseye that you're shooting for a little bit smaller.
mm.
And so when you hit it, you know, you really got to be malleable to what that deal looks like and what budget they want to make it on and all those things. It's like the the age of, you know, until you hit that realm that you're making 5 million bucks a movie to direct, you can't really go into that room and boss people around. It's like what they have is what they have, you
Yeah.
know. So
Okay. Does that then make you try and think of new revenue streams? You know
for
what I mean?
sure.
So you're more ready for situations and you're not as beholden on, a big studio streaming platform to be able to get things popping.
Yeah, you know, honestly, which I don't really have an answer for, but I think the distribution model is slowly changing in front of our eyes. And I think like we're slowly realizing that, you know, a ton of these indie movies aren't getting picked up, right? And what's going to happen to them? I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, we're always open to figure out something. I mean, the current kind of system that the studios have set up, you know, it's really not friendly to
Mm,
indie filmmakers. It's like if they don't deem your project watchable, then what happens?
yeah.
And I think that needs to change. There needs to be another outlet that's a little bit more accepting of the indie model and can do a good rev share split and kind of all that stuff so that we're not just like slaves to the big studios.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel, yeah, there's things that need to happen because it is kind of crazy sometimes when you look at these things and the revenue shares and the way certain people aren't getting paid and other people get it, like it's very odd. It's an odd
Yeah, for sure. For
way.
sure.
Hmm. Boy, man, like, yeah, it just feels like so many great things in the future for you, man.
Man, they're coming, dude. They take a long time to get there, but yeah, I think the next 3 years are going to be pretty busy. So yeah.
Like, how do you keep that focus though? Right? How do you keep that enthusiasm for, this industry, for everything, even though like you've got like these big things coming, you know what I mean? But you're still having to, fight for projects getting picked up, fight for financing, fight for opportunities. So how do you keep that focus?
That's a really tough question. I think it's something that's almost like a clinically insane type thing, where it's just like I really love these projects so much that I can't not work on them. And
Mm,
sure, it's not talked about enough. I said this very very briefly at the beginning, but like the entire process isn't talked about enough with creatives, right? It's like we always see the last day of shoot or when a movie comes out or like or someone sells a script. It's like we always see the end of the process, but we never talk about all the lulls and ups and downs that creative took to get there, right? Like how many times that creative almost gave up. You don't
yes.
get that. You only see them selling a script, right? And like even though I love these projects to death and I'm going to be in this industry till the day I die, it that doesn't mean that I still don't have days where I feel like giving up, right? And I think that's really important to talk about because that's completely okay and natural and normal. And I think the more that we talk about that, I'm sure even some of the greats like, Steven Soderbergh and, all those guys, I'm sure that they've had product projects that they've tried to push down the belly of the beast and it just didn't work and they just feel
Mm.
exhausted and torn up about it. And I think that even the best go through that and it's just not talked about enough.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Because that's a thing, because it's like social media, right? You look at
Sure.
it and everyone's putting out their best life. No one's talking
Sure.
about those knockbacks. It's just like, oh, I had a great date last night, but they're not going, yeah, like 10 chicks turned me down, right? So,
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the honesty of it. You know what I mean? I decided the other day that I was gonna start posting a little bit more on Instagram and TikTok, but the angle was gonna be like complete honesty as a filmmaker. Like what happens when your agent drops you, or what
mm,
happens when you find a new manager and it's not really going too well, or you get a pitch with Netflix and it bombs. You know what I mean? It's like those things are natural part of the process, and it's crazy that they're almost these unrealistic expectations of like we were talking about before the Damien Chazelle's of the
oh, ah, man, Wi-Fi seems to be interrupting us, but hopefully, yeah, we will have Seth back shortly. Ah, no worries.
um yeah, what I was saying was it's this idea of like these unrealistic expectations of like hitting it perfectly your first time. Like
Mm,
Damien Chazelle making Whiplash, which is like personally one of my favorite movies of all time, right? Like for that to be his first movie is an unrealistic goal for a lot of directors, right? Realistically.
yeah.
And which that's more of a hats off to him than anything, right? You can tell that he went to Harvard off of the type of movie he makes, right? And I think it's one of these things that it's really not talked about enough, that it's all about how many times you failed, right?
Mm,
It's about how many movies you didn't work out, or I would love to know the number of Steven Soderbergh movies that didn't work out because I bet it's pretty high,
yes.
right? And that's why he is who he is. And so, I think that's something that I've really started to learn lately and started to really want to talk about with more creatives is just like this natural getting knocked down and having to get back up is just a part of the process.
Mm. No, definitely. I think I think it's so important to talk about, right? To have those honest conversations about things, right? The
Sure,
failures, the successes, the things that were just okay, right? But it's just talking about it all, because then people get an honest view of what something is, rather
sure,
than just this sugar coated version that gets perpetuated a lot of the
sure, sure.
time. But what do you like? If it does, do you have music? Do you read? Is there sport? What are the things that help, you know, top up that energy when needed?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's a good question, man. I mean, honestly, a nice break, not doing anything for a week is normally what I go to. It's like I really try to, when I'm not motivated, I normally try to read just because it kind of gives you that motivation that you need. Um, but most of the time, it's just a break, man. I'm a big also American football fan.
Okay.
Um, so my New Orleans Saints aren't the best, but I cry if they win and I cry if they lose. It doesn't matter. I'm crying on Sunday either way.
Oh man, I'm Washington, so we
Okay.
haven't
Oh
had
man,
a good season
in a
in,
while.
oh
But
my god.
you guys are gonna get someone good in the draft this year. You guys, it's your time. It's your time.
I don't know, man. Oh, it's so difficult.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it
so
really is.
difficult.
It's a good way to turn off your brain, though. You know what I mean? It's a really good way to turn off your brain.
Oh man, yeah, there's something about, because it's not all sport, right? I really like American football. Man, I love mixed martial arts. Like, I watch the
Nice.
UFC all the time. I love that shit.
Sure.
Like just jujitsu competitions, right? Like Medusa and the 10th Planet stuff, and I just love just watching that combat jujitsu. Like, I don't certain athletics, not all athletics. So it's very,
Sure.
yeah, kind of interesting, the things. I used to love basketball. Used to love basketball, man. With Sean Kemp and Gary Payton on the Supersonics. Yo,
Yeah, the Supersonics.
oh my
Yeah.
days. Those were the day, the Rain Man. Just love that shit. Man, yeah, they used to show it like at 4 a.m. in the morning over here. So it'd
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
just being up late watching that. But I don't know, man. Like, sometimes it's the commentary. I hate the commentary. So I'm just, I cannot put up with this dude's voice. I can't
Sure.
watch this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Well, Kevin, I've really enjoyed this interview, man. I appreciate you taking the time to watch everything and obviously giving Jason kind of a platform to talk about his movie and myself. So I
Hey,
appreciate you, man.
no worries, man.
People are watching, dude. People are watching.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I hope so, because it just like it helps, like the creatives get their stuff out there, and to
It
be,
does,
I
dude.
think,
It
talk
really, really
about,
does.
what I mean, talk about what they do, rather than just a 5 minute little clip and that kind of thing. I want people to be able to just talk about that story, let
Yeah.
someone know
Yeah.
everything that went into bringing this thing to life.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely, man.
Awesome, man. But yeah, really appreciate the time, man. How can people keep track of what you're doing? That's the
Man,
question.
Instagram or IMDb. It's all over the place. I also own a company called Speakeasy Pictures, which we post everything to that website. So
Outstanding. So people, definitely go follow Seth on socials. Go check out Echo Boomers. Go check out Ghosts in the Void. Right? They're both incredible films. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I do think with Echo Boomers, because as I said, like, people didn't love Donnie Darko at the start, but
sure,
now people love it. Right?
sure.
And I think it's gonna be one of those films too.
I appreciate you. I appreciate that. It will. It's only a matter of time.
Yes, exactly. But man, I am so looking forward to what is to come. Man, it's going to be just great seeing that rise. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, and when you're ready, hey, please come back and let's have another conversation.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I
All right.
appreciate you, Kevin. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man. Take it
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
Bye.